Well, good morning, kids. Now, so many decisions are being made as I sleep. It's funny how, if you really, 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 really trust the Lord, you can start to sleep. You get healed because of the beamer. People start to listen to you. The intellectual people that are in such total control. I just love my cousin Joe Carvin, who spent 10 effing years writing one book. And he's trying to tell me that he doesn't know how to do certain things. It's because he has to be in control of everything because of fear. I've known Joe since he was a little boy because I was a little boy, but I was always a year and a half older than him and just 3 months younger than his older brother. And the three of us, there's a picture of the three of us in front of the Alamo taken in 1959. I'm sorry, 1958. Before the gentleman by the name of Jimmy Carvin, who's furiously working very hard to write every book he can get his hands on so that there will be a legitimacy given to him because he's always been a caretaker. But it's time for us to take care of him because me being 10 years older than he is, I knew him when his mother, the Julie Carvin, who was Julie Logan Carvin, who was my mother's older sister. Jimmy was born when we got home from Texas, and my older sister by 2 years and 2 months, literally, when we had a fire in Mamaroneck, New York, when I nearly burned the house down because we were playing downstairs, and my sister Robin said she was bored, and when we went under the house to play, we had to go past a sump pump and go down and then up into a basement in Mamaroneck. And Thanksgiving, it's cold, so we were in a fort, and my cousin and I, while my sister wanted to smoke a cigarette, we wanted to light the place up. So I decided to make a campfire with the boxes that were in there that were in there for years since the place was built. And when I lit that match, that those boxes went up like bam, and we were stuck in there because we told our younger cousin Corinne to lock the door to get in there, and didn't matter what if we screamed or whatever to get out. Don't let us out. The parents were upstairs partying, drinking the way they always normally did, martini after martini after martini. And we're down in the basement playing because they don't want to listen to kids. Get downstairs. We're playing, Parcheesi, Monopoly. Robin's in seventh grade. She's already got Sprouters. What does she want to do? She has to be the babysitter for all of this. She had the little baby Jimmy with her. He was only a year, and he was born in August of 1958. So he was only a real baby. And I'm in fifth grade. Robin's in seventh grade. And, Joe Carvin, myself, I give the instructions. We light a match, or I light the match to start the fire, the campfire, and bam, off it goes, and it starts to burn. It's a dirt floor because it's under the kind of like the basement under the garage, and it starts to burn the house. And we're calling and screaming, Corinne, let us out, Corinne. Well, you told me not to let you out. And so she finally eventually did. We poured out of there. The smoke was coming out. We're freaking out. The parents suddenly come down. Then they call the fire department, and the story even gets greater and greater. And it wasn't funny, not at all. And those were back in the days when you got the belt. My cousin David was up doing his homework when everything calmed down and settled down, and we left. I didn't know it, but my Uncle Charlie went up and whipped David. Why? Why? I was up here. Well, if you had, if you weren't doing your homework, you would have been down there. I know, and you would have been part of this. So this is to tell you to never do it again. And bam, bam, the belt. Man, they knew how to use a belt, but sometimes they didn't know what they were doing because they were all drunk. All of them. My Uncle Charlie, my Aunt Julie, my father, my mother. And I remember I was so relieved that, God, Uncle Charlie's not mad at me. And I was downstairs and I was bouncing a basketball and it hit the ceiling. And he turned and he said, "You burned down my house now? Now you're trying to blow up my house?" My dad ordered me upstairs to go and sit in the yellow Rambler, which was a Nash. And I sat and I cried and I cried and I cried, thinking that everything was my fault. Most of my life has been crying and crying and crying, believing everything is my fault. And most people agree. If I point, to some object for somebody, "Don't point, that's rude." Well, before you accuse me, take a look at yourself. If you're not pointing, or if you happen to point with one finger, there are three that are pointing back at you. Listen, we have to stop being controlling, patrolling, safety patrol policemen over everybody else's life and get the effing log out of our eye as we're trying and attempting to pick out the speck in everybody else when we look in the mirror and we don't even like ourselves. So a whole life of going through that, and I'm reading my autobiography and I keep losing the place for the publishers to have something to begin to upload. But the idea came to me, why don't I just make these videos? And I continue to read my own manuscripts that are all professionally done, that I've done over the years. I have 2 successful books. One's really weird, called Out of His Mouth, which, the flim-flam man by the name of Fred Williams was exposed because I got interviewed by Fox. Randy Travis did this in Atlanta, and I have 2 of those videos. I'm trying to catch up with who I am and where I've been before a lot of these mega churches were built. Now I go into a mega church, I get too close to the pastor, I'm worshiping the Lord, and the security guards want to throw me out, or they're watching me. Holy smokes. And the woman that I've been seeing and walking with and talking with, she's freaking out because she's a Catholic girl starting much too late. She's trying to make sure, "Logan, just sit down." She doesn't know me. She doesn't know anything about me. She doesn't know the anointing on me. She doesn't know the scriptures. The minute that you start telling yourself, "Well, those prayers are too long," because she's an alcoholic and she doesn't believe it. She believes everybody else is. When I use the expression, "You're drunk," all your drunk friends, "Oh, they're not drunk." "Oh, yes, they are. Oh, yes, they are." That's the problem when I go to the American Legion. That's all they do is drink. But they're recovering from war. Give them a break. I didn't go to Vietnam. My whole life was avoiding war because my father was a prisoner of war in Germany. He was a B-17 co-pilot, 35 missions, only 20% of them returned. Then the crazy guy who didn't even know Jesus, didn't believe that he existed, he re-upped to fly the P-51 Mustang and then went down in Germany. That's a story for another day. Anyhow, I'm going to read this book, and I'm going to then call my cousin. We're going to get into, "Oh, that's speaking in tongues. No, that's of the devil. Oh, that's not really of the Lord." The fight goes on. Who knows the truth? Truth or dare, it doesn't matter at this point. I'm tired of bickering. Let's just get on with the Lord and the joy of the Lord and play and have fun. Have snowball fights and things like that. My poor cousin Jimmy, he doesn't have time to sit down and do that because he can't let go. He's got to finish this. If he doesn't finish, he's going to write 150 Psalms. He's going to memorize every one of them because our great-grandmother, not our great-grandmother, our grandmother, our common mother in the grand, Corinne Logan, Corinne Howell Logan. Logan, my name is Logan Rogers. Robert Logan Rogers. I was named after a Presbyterian, Granny would say, a Presbyterian minister in the 1800s, Robert Logan. And then she proceeds to call me Logan all of my life. And I'm like, wait a minute. I don't like the name Logan as a child. It's odd. I want to be Bob. I go to Sunday school. Hey, Bob, how are you, Robert? Somebody says, that's not Robert, that's Logan. Exposes me because, they were in my Presbyterian Sunday school and also in my class. I got, uh-oh. Now I have to be Logan again. Now it's the most common name, but it's a lovely name, and a lot of people love that. Here it is now, 10 minutes and 17 seconds. So I'm going to start where I think I left off. Ending my relationship with Wendy was my first task. The hardest decision of my life. I was emotionally attached to her and had been looking forward to our future together. This hope ended as I gave of myself and learned to do the right thing. In hindsight, I believe this was the first act of denying myself, which led to the breaking of my ego. This breaking led to repentance, which simply means a change of mind. Later, the Lord would honor me for this attitude as He opened me to receive His mercy and His gift of salvation. I remember that cold, late December afternoon as I drove to Wendy's home to tell her what had happened. Would I really go through with it, or would I change my mind? Would I once again run away from responsibility or do the right thing? My inner struggle weighed because Lee, a person in need, against my own self-interest, was there between life and death. How could I live with myself if I give in to this desire to run away, which what I did all my life, something I had spent that lifetime doing? With the task at hand, Wendy and I drove to the beach. In tears, I told her how I could never see her again. We cried, and she kept assuring me that she understood. She kept saying that it seemed like a live soap opera to her as we said our goodbyes. As I drove off to New York, and this is page 5 for the person who's filming this, for us to be reminded where to pick up again. As I drove off to New York, and licked my fingers so I can turn the pages. As I drove off to New York to visit Lee in the hospital, I cried out to God, since I am being responsible in my marriage, will you make it possible for Wendy and me to get back together again if things don't work out with Lee? This and that would never happen. More than a year passed before I could get the emotions of her out of my head and off my heart. I saw her one more time a year later, and it only served to open the old wounds. Every day I went to the hospital. While recovering, Lee endured several nerve operations. I remember praying and trying to believe. Long ago, I was a pot smoker, and I found it easier to get into spiritual things by smoking pot and then listening to music. I had not yet begun reading the Bible, but I do remember discovering the 700 Club one morning on television in Lee's hospital room. I remember thinking how neat that was. I remember her reaction was somewhat angry and negative toward the show. This was my first indication that Christianity was too judgmental for her and too black and white for her, and she wasn't going to have it. Lee and her mother would make negative comments at get well cards containing messages like, God bless you. Her mother showed real disgust and distaste for anything Christian. 2 months in 2 different hospitals would bring therapy and a great deal of physical and psychological trauma. This experience would define love as I had never known it. Staying with her was an act of my will that would soon rekindle feelings for her. It was never easy, as she would constantly accuse me of wrong motives. I was told that I was doing this out of guilt or pity. The pain in her medication would cause her to lash out at me and God. How could God allow this tragedy to happen? My challenge was to try and remain positive while trying to get her to believe in a merciful God. My hope was that if she believed, this would take pressure off of me. I was under the impression that God would make things easier if we cooperated with him. This, and now I'm turning to page 7, guys. And I think I'm going to end on page 7 at the top. It's beginning. This process was teaching me to live one day at a time. Oh, let me do a little bit more. One day I remember arriving at the hospital and listening to a song that spoke of being part of a plan. Tears began to stream down my face as this struck me as a wonderful truth. I began to ponder everything in one big thought, as if everything had purpose. I remember sensing God speaking to me through the song, and this left me with a renewed hope. I thought this feeling would permeate the very hospital and awaken Lee to the truth I was experiencing. I was brought to my senses as I entered her hospital room to be screamed at for being late. I did not let go of my experience, though. It just drove me to want more. All right, I begin at a new day. And I'm not going to even close this thing because it's look. It's a 3-ring manuscript, professionally, already edited. Bye-bye. Love you all.